So again, our time today I am your moderator. My nickname is Mordecai, and so I'll be moderating our time today. Our host is BLM Lansing, Liberation PAC, and One Love Global. Our tech support again is Sarah Gettel, Gettel, and then our facilitators. We want to give a shout out to them. Thank you for volunteering your time to facilitate these important discussions. So this is our agenda for today. Again, we're just going to talk for all of those that if this is your first time, we'll talk a little bit about what is a People's Assembly and how will it benefit Lansing. Then we'll have our time of grounding by our leader, Angela. And then we'll move and talk about review of safety priorities from the July Assembly and look at the survey that many of you are participated in. And then we'll head out to our breakout groups to reimagine the city budget based on our priorities. And then there will be a time where we will come back from the breakout sessions and report out what are those next steps. All right, so when we talk about a People's Assembly, very clearly and simply, a People's Assembly is where the collective, not the elected, determine the outcomes. It is an ongoing process, a dedicated space where it's community-driven and co-governance. Democratize data and make information accessible, center those directly impacted. We build our collective vision and our collective priorities together in this space. And we also hold ourselves and elected officials accountable. And we take action and with deliverable results. So this is a space where we say, hey, we have a voice and we are a part of the governance of our city. And so this is a safe space where we determine our priorities. What are those next steps? And we deliver those. So that is the action that we plan to present our budget and our priorities to our elected officials. Again, the collective, not the elected, determine the outcomes of our city. So as a warm-up, we'd like to, again, fill up the comment section with this particular question. Combining law enforcement, courts, and prisons, the United States criminal justice system consumes $212 billion a year and employs 2.4 million people, more than Walmart and McDonald's combined, the nation's two largest private employers. What does this data suggest to you? If you can fill up the comment section, this is our warm-up. What does this data suggest to you about our culture, the way we govern, the way we treat each other? What does it say? What sticks out to you? So I'm going to ask you to put this in the comment section. So we've got it is more important to punish than to support. Fear is a significant motivator in our culture. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for participating. People believe that the threat of incarceration is the answer to our society's problems instead of restorative justice. I got you. Yep. Criminal industrial complex is all about making money. The privatization of our prisons and jails. Absolutely. Tough on crime is really all we care about. Thank you. Fill up that comment section. Thank you. Criminal industrial complex is equal to slavery. Absolutely. Free labor for America. We have a large economic dependency on imprisoning. Absolutely. Not enough resources to aid in keeping people out of prison. That's also a big money maker. Absolutely. So many people are not free with this level of state control. Misplaced resources. Thank you. Absolutely. So this is the framework of our conversation today. We started our first People's Assembly around the issue of public safety, personal and public and collective safety. Now today's subject is participatory budgeting. We're going to look at the city budget with the framework and through the lens of safety. And so we're going to keep building this conversation. So I want to thank you for participating, Marshall. A system of oppression designed to monetize at all costs, more police jobs and prison space. Absolutely. Thank you for participating. So we're at our time of grounding. I know Angela has something happening personal. Angela, are you able to lead us in our grounding?
Can you hear me okay? Is there too much background sound?
You're on mute.
I'm unmuted, so can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. And
Okay.
your background sounds fine.
Okay, then yes,
Yeah.
I'll go. It's just 10 minutes and then we'll get everybody moving to the next part. So I want to remind us why we are embarking on a People's Assembly process, and it's about us coming together to build the vision that we hold for a beloved community, and then that's in the spirit of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who envisioned a beloved community. And for us, that means that the conditions that create crime and violence are no longer present, that outcomes can no longer be predicted by race. Racial hierarchy is no longer the norm, and everyone feels welcome and everyone feels safe. And so the process that we're moving through is ultimately moving us closer to this vision of a beloved community. So how we got here, for those of you who weren't at the last assembly, welcome to the first assembly. We had the first People's Assembly on July 18th, and we really focused on what safety means to us and really reimagining that. So we had questions of what does safety mean? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How will you know when you are safe? What do you think will be important for our city to do to actually achieve that collective safety? And what needs to be improved as far as our systems? And also, what else needs to happen? Because it's culture, some of it's internal, and we really wanted to open that up for us to have some space to dream and imagine. From the ideas that were generated on that first session, there were more than 80 ideas and actions for change, and our amazing team at One Love Global actually created a survey out of those ideas and actions. So they went through and pulled things and created a survey. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been inviting people to participate in the survey and to actually help us prioritize. We use ranked choice voting. For those of you who are a fan of that, you will. It absolutely allows you to have much more flexibility and allows the community to really be more thoughtful about the choices that we make, and just a more democratic process for arriving at our decisions. So we have the survey results. They're linked in the chat so that you can actually pull up the entire survey results, because what we're going to show you here is really the top 3 priorities that came out of that survey. So based on the ranked choice voting of 104 respondents, the top 3 priorities are defunding the police and investing the money in community organizations, ensuring a livable wage for all to meet basic needs, and diverting funds to community programs and mental health help, as well as preventative measures. And as you can see that these categories, these responses were categorized in kind of big buckets, and there were a number of them. So if you're pulling up the survey, you can see out of those responses that people were really thoughtful about ranking them and really thinking about what really needs to happen in our community. And to our delight, defunding the police and reinvesting that money in the community is the top priority. So these are our big three. We want you to look at all of them. These are the three that we're going to dive deeper into. And what you'll see as you're working through the survey, that many of the ideas are fairly consistent and somewhat duplicative, and I'll say reinforcing. So you'll see a lot of reinforcement of the same ideas with slightly different language. Next slide, please. So our vision for a Lansing People's Budget is really understanding first and foremost that budgets are moral documents. When we look at where our money goes, you think about your home budget and the choices that you have to make, whether you have a luxurious budget or if you have a fairly restricted budget. Ultimately, you make choices on how you spend the money in your home based on your priorities, based on your values, based on the morals of what you put first. And city budgets, state budgets, federal budgets are no different. And what we are envisioning is that we know that this is not going to happen in one session. And also, we understand that we have to understand the government process. And one of the most important aspects of people's assemblies, and especially this people's budget, is really understanding where budgets come from, how they happen, who contributes to them, and ultimately making sure that the community has a voice and actually is showing up powerfully so that our budget priorities, our morals are actually showing up in the budget. So we actually are building our collective capacity. We're building our community power, and we're actually going to learn how government works by actually doing this work. We're going to spare you from showing you clips from city council meetings, but we absolutely encourage and invite you to actually show up for our city council meetings. They're virtual right now. And especially for those public comments. If you're not able to show up at the public comment session, you can actually submit them by email, but you have so many ways for your voice to be heard. And this is a space that we're creating where we collectively create a people's budget, and ultimately we're going to present our budget. We're going to present our budget to City Council and to the leadership of this community, because we want everyone's buy-in, and we want to make it clear that this is the community's budget. So where does the money come from? As you can see, the biggest chunk of money for our for the city budget, it comes from property taxes. And so there's links to documents that go much more in depth. The entire city budget will make sure that you're equipped with lots and lots of homework. We just want to give you enough information to get your wheels turning. So this is not going to be a budgeting course, mainly because I'm not qualified to teach one. So you're going to get the community grassroots level presentation on city budget. And we'll go deeper with folks that have more expertise in future sessions. So as you can see, property taxes, income taxes, like half of the budget is coming out of our pockets. That's the thing that I really want you to understand. There's a portion of state shared revenues. We could speculate on where those revenues come from. Likely out of your pocket. So if you think about the small share of revenues that are actually coming from licenses and permits and fines and forfeitures, charges for services, investments, by and large, it is the people who actually pay for government, and that is absolutely why the budget should be the people's budget. So where does this money go? And just to kind of hone in on where we are, why we're having this conversation, again, morals. What does this budget, the way that funds are allocated, where expenses go, tell us about what our priorities are? When 1% goes to neighborhood and citizen engagement, and 32% go to police. 3% human services and agency support, 5% economic development and planning. Now think about what those top priorities were. Defunding the police, 32%, huge piece of the pie, the biggest piece of the pie from the general fund. A third of the budget is going to policing, which means that we are starving neighborhood investment, we are starving human services, and we're starving economic development. And those are the top 3 priorities that were named by our survey respondents. So yeah, we're gonna take a quick look at this budget, and you can spend way more time on it when we send this out. You can watch the video, you can watch the full presentation, and there are helpful links in the chat if you just wanna dive in deeper. But look at these numbers. So that 32% of the general fund budget in real dollars, $46 million. And I want to make sure I draw attention to the millage, because that's going to continue to come up. Voters approved a 1.5 mil property tax millage, and that supplies the police department with $3.2 million. That's on top of funding that comes from drug forfeitures. I really want to emphasize that line item, because in addition to the general fund, there are funds that actually come from seizing people's property from suspected criminal activity. Suspected. Those assets are almost never returned. So yeah, $46 million is a huge piece of our budget. It's a huge number. And if you think about what we could actually do in those areas that are underinvested, how far that $46 million could be spread while still maintaining public safety by investing in areas that actually get to the root of violence and crime in our community. Next slide, please. So this is just more detail into what those costs go into. And so this actually came out of a presentation that Councilwoman Carol Wood presented from the Ways and Means Committee. She provided this report at the City Council meeting on Monday, and you can watch the full video for her actually explaining line by line what is in this budget. But one of the things that she really was driving home, and that we're going to continue to hear time and time again, is that there are these legacy costs which they are considering as fixed costs. Pensions, healthcare, workers' comp, and $500,000 in miscellaneous expenses. $500,000, I don't know anybody who could get away with a miscellaneous $500,000 budget line item and not have to provide detail on that. So you look at the cost of just salaries. 36% of the budget, I'm sorry, 40% of the budget is roughly salaries. And almost, I mean, you have 36% of the budget that is fixed in these legacy costs, which, to my understanding, and we'll definitely want to get much more input and understanding from our council members about what those legacy costs actually represent and whether or not they actually are impacted by reducing the police force. Again, more budget detail, and you begin to see the actual line items that actually go into the cost of operating our police force. So of that $46 million, how much of it is being spent on equipment rental and information technology? You see these fairly big line items that go into infrastructure to maintain policing. So what do police do with their time? How are they actually spending their time based on this $46 million? And as you can see, and so there's a much longer list, and we'll share this too so that you can actually see all of the responses. But these are the top 15. These are the calls for service, traffic stops. I don't think people are calling for traffic stops. So these are self-initiated stops. The majority of police time, or if you kind of look at it just based on the frequency of the work that the police do, a big part of that is in traffic stops. Welfare checks, troublesome subjects, no assault, suspicious people, unwanted guests. Like, these are very vague kind of actions and activities that police are following up on. And I think the question is this actually a good return on the investment of $46 million? So just a brief on the Lansing City budget process, because we're actually going to go much more in depth about this, because what you'll see is that there's a series of hearings that are going to come up, and we're going to need to be prepared to come with our people's budgets. We have 3 minutes to talk at those hearings, so we actually may need to be strategic in how we present this. And we absolutely will do a community presentation of our people's budget, but it is important that we actually bring it straight to City Council chamber. So in October, City Council will submit recommendations on priorities. In March, the mayor will submit his proposed budget draft. There will be a series of hearings in the spring through April and May, and then the budget is adopted in May for the next fiscal year. So this is an extended process. That's really what I really wanted to get across here, and that we actually have to start now, which is why we're doing this now. We can't wait until October to come to City Council with our priorities. We need to know what our priorities now, so that when City Council is submitting their recommendations, that they are submitting the people's recommendations. All right, and I will turn it back to you, Mordecai, for the next steps.
All right, we just before we head over to our breakout sessions, we're going to ask Crystal to lead us in our community agreement.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry. Hi. I'm just going to read off our community agreements, and then if you guys could acknowledge acceptance of the agreements in the chat. Please feel free to read along. As a member in or a supporter of the Lansing community, I agree to make a conscious commitment to honor the following agreements. 1, respect. Respect the rights of others to hold opinions and beliefs that differ from your own. When you disagree, challenge/critique the idea, not the person. 2, affect. Practice intentional listening. Let your comments, requests for clarification, critiques, etc. reflect that you have paid attention to the comments made by the person who spoke before you. 3, inclusion. Take space, make space. Be mindful of others. Share responsibly. If you have much to say, try to hold back a bit. If you are hesitant to speak, look for opportunities to contribute to the discussion. 4, grace. Recognize that we are all still learning. Be willing to challenge your perspective and make space for others to do the same. 5, sanctuary. Create a safe space for sharing. Keep personal stories that people share confidential. Always be guided by and offer contributions that are rooted in and come from our desire to improve our beloved community of Lansing. And so if you guys can acknowledge in the chat the community agreements, and turn it back over to Pastor Holland.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you everyone for participating. You now have 5 questions that have been posted in the chat feature, and you will be moved automatically into breakout sessions, but check your chat before you go over. There are 5 questions that the facilitators will be leading discussions around these 5 questions. And so if you don't see them, please let us know. If and when you get into your breakout session, you should receive an invitation on the screen that you're being invited into breakout room 1, 2, or 3. But if you're having tech issues, please chat with Sarah Gettle. So thank you.